Alrighty.
Alrighty.
It's been 2 weeks
Yep.
and we've missed each other immensely.
Well, the group hug in the beginning was special.
So we all got sick, from me. Well, not from me. But the last time we
Patient
spoke.
zero.
Yeah.
So I was sick, we rocked up and we thought we'd be fine.
So some of us thought that they would be fine.
Yeah.
Not all of us.
But we did discuss that Neil probably got sick from one of the 7 people that were sick around him. And it's been long since I saw you, and you only got sick recently, so it's probably not from.
It's fair.
Okay.
And then Garth went to Mauritius without us.
And had a bit of a break,
Yeah.
a work
Nice.
break.
Nice.
Discussed how we're going to go there and do our next podcast there.
Next week.
Soon.
It's just going to
Too
depend
soon.
on that sponsorship. We'll see.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so we'll land the sponsorship deal.
Yeah.
We'll
If anyone wants to hear this from Mauritius,
yeah.
hit us up.
But I think what Neil said, what we can do, we can do like a enter and win, and then we take 7 guys with us.
Okay,
We
fine.
just need to find
Fine.
a decent sponsor.
Sounds good to me.
I'll find a company that wants to put a product in the country, and then we'll sort something out.
Fine.
All right, so we're going to talk about
Ben's haircut, right?
Ben's haircut.
I did get a haircut. I did get a So my in-body score didn't improve at all without the hair. So if there's any ladies out there or gents looking to improve the in-body score by shaving their head, doesn't work,
Doesn't work.
At all.
But you did do it for a good cause. You told us that
Did
you
it for a good
donated
cause.
us-
Yep. So had an interaction with a patient this week who has cancer, and they just in passing mentioned that I could donate my hair to someone who has cancer. Not him specifically. He was referring to people with 2 X chromosomes. But yeah, decided, why not? I've got the hair to donate. So donated that. It's gone.
And then while you're out, we discussed our dress code for next week. So you'll get that update
Cool.
Through Gisela. And we'll make sure that we're all dressed. We've got a dress code for next week, but
Alright.
we'll send it to you.
Nice.
Okay, so the podcast name, I think Neil can maybe give it to us. What's it going to be exactly? What are we going to call it?
We're looking at brain longevity.
Yo.
I know.
Maybe.
How do we stay sharp for longer?
Okay, so where do we start? Because we're obviously kids at once upon a time and our brain's developing. When does our brain stop developing, Benzo?
It's different for men and for women. Men take much longer. So we don't really know. But
Is that because we
it's-
have bigger brains or we're just slower?
Yeah, I think
The uptake.
Yeah.
It's the uptake process.
defer this question.
Is it because we've got to pass our second brain so it takes longer to get there? Or
You're talking about the gut, eh? The gut being the same.
oh, you mean, oh, yes, sorry, we've got 3.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't actually know. I think obviously will be a hormonal underlying factor to brain development. Most likely, estrogen and progesterone just helps brain development happen more quickly. We do actually see this with guys who abuse testosterone. They literally drop IQ, so they do get thicker. So it could be testosterone delaying our brain development. I'm not sure.
Thicker twofold. They get thicker,
Thicker.
but they get thicker.
Thicker 2-4. So probably that. So females, we see brain plasticity drop generally around 18 and males 23.
Okay. Just a quick question before I forget it. A big one that I learned from one of the podcasts with Andrew Bin was caffeine. When would you, if you had kids, or let's say if it was James and Ems, when would you allow them to get caffeine in on a daily consumption or weekly consumption to not let brain health be stopped? Because it basically stops the pathways.
So caffeine is not something you ever have to introduce your children to, but it's not something that's going to be detrimental to their long-term health. We've seen numerous studies coming out with the link of caffeine and the delay of Alzheimer's, so it can be very good for your brain. We know that. But I would say not. There's no hard and fast rules. So the problem is we can't do these studies. We can't take a child, give them too much caffeine, and then be like, "Oops, that was too much." Okay, so less than that. But I would say around 15, 16 is a fairly responsible time.
Okay, for both. So maybe try to delay it on boys because he's saying that goes up to 23. So if you can delay it.
Boys
But
are
I
going to
mean-
say, I'm telling you, boys are drinking Monster at 12. So
Yeah. Well, that's what we see in school. I mean, I'm in a primary school, work at a primary school, and the kids walk around with caffeine in Cokes, caffeine in whatever it is. They're drinking scores. They pour it from the score into the bottle so no one knows, and they drink
Yes.
it.
Yeah. Is it the end of the world? Probably not. If you have children who listen to you and a perfect situation, I would say around 16 is a good time to introduce it.
Yeah, I think that's what the study that they were talking about. I think it was Andrew Huberman. They were mentioning that.
He might know what he's talking about. Maybe.
Yeah. What else would you, from a younger age, like to bring in to watch out for longevity, or should we go straight into when we're getting older? Because I mean, we spoke about how we want to try and start younger so that we don't get this Alzheimer's.
Well, I mean, all your good habits should start from early age. So I mean, like you want to teach your kid about healthy habits. So whether that's eating better and all of those things play a long part. So otherwise, habits get harder to break when they're getting older. I think an easy one to abuse is also sleep. Like at a kid, you can stay up, especially now with screen times too late, and wake up early, and that's when your brain is developing. It's an important time to make sure you're getting high quality sleep. Otherwise, that brain ain't recovering and growing the way it needs to go. So, that's simple, but one that's often overlooked, even as an adult.
Yeah, I think that's stimulation of the brain as well. So early in the morning, like my kids, they wake up before they're even going. They're like, "Can we watch TV?"
Shut up.
Like, no, we're gonna learn to do routine. In the morning we get
In the
up,
morning,
we get
get a
breakfast,
hiding,
and
you start your day.
Yeah. So that's big in my house. I fight the boss with that because she's like, just let them be, because then they're out of your hair for half an hour while you're trying to get them ready, which is sometimes easier. But I still just think, like, if they learn it, then it's better. So can we just say blue light, or must it be screen time, like in general?
It's not, it's screen time in general. So blue light is before bed. We worry about neurostimulation, but in general, it's not healthy to be processing that much stimulation, if I can put it that way. That's why we see increases in things like ADD, is because children are not introduced to the idea of task-focused activities early on. A story happens very quickly. There's lots of different colors that flash across very quickly. If they were building a Lego house, that would take a long time on one focused thing. Does that make sense? So the stimulus is more the issue than the actual light for morning time.
Yeah, so a simple thing there for adult or child will be in the morning, do a task.
Task focus.
Whether it's you getting yourself ready or your kids ready for your day. And then for your kid, just put them in front of a single individual thing, drawing. I mean, we let our kids draw in the morning. That's what you guys can finish your drawing in the morning. Then I normally go and actually prep the table. I'll leave the coloring stuff out so they know to come through. Can we watch TV? No, your coloring stuff's there. So something single task. And then we obviously spoke about trying to get sleep, and that's obviously a big thing. So Neil mentioning now sleep. For the longevity side, that's obviously just the most important thing. So making sure from a young age that you getting 8 to 10 hours and then nothing less than 7 for as long as you can.
Yeah.
Forever.
Sleep as much as you can. And if you want to know how much is enough, if you could have slept more, then that wasn't enough. That simple. And I think everyone every morning wakes up feeling like they could have slept more. So it's hectic. Sleep is a very difficult thing. That's from when we're young till when we're old, always going to be the case. But there's always things you can do. Good sleep habits. Obviously, we've spoken extensively about sleep, but habit forming when you're young pays off dramatically when you're older. So I would definitely look at that.
For the elderly, so it's young, us, and then older. So for the elderly, like their body clocks start changing.
Correct.
They must just trying to force themselves to go to bed earlier if they are waking up earlier.
I mean, so I've got this one patient of mine. He eats supper at 3:30 in the afternoon, and then sort of winds down for bedtime at 4:30. So you kind of start looking, maybe when do you start missing out on life? You know what I mean? So I think you have to be a little bit reasonable about this. He's very happy with this. So
married.
Great. Married.
Is he married?
Yeah.
Okay.
They got their routine and they're very happy. So yeah, I don't think that we need to necessarily be looking at what times or whatever, but if you're able to maximize the sleep that you can get, go for it.
Okay. So we've got our pillars. So Neil, maybe take us through our pillars again, because when we're talking about brain health, if you're doing our 5 things, you shouldn't need to do anything else. And we extensively discussed in the way here that why do we even need to talk about this topic if we've been over our pillars? and you shouldn't need supplementation and that. But I mean, we're obviously going to then talk about what can be added to our pillars. I mean, we spoke about sleep now. We spoke about obviously like a little bit of like a good routine. What are we missing there? Obviously we touched on the nutrition side, and we've been extensively into that. But then what else can we do on those pillars? Training. We spoke about training a bit and making sure.
Activity again is one of those things that, you know, pardon me, has shown to have a great effect on the brain, and exercising at sort of different intensities. And can't be avoided. If you are not using your body, you're missing out on a big part of brain health. So, you know, and that can be something as simple as walking, or something as, you know, challenging as interval training or doing a hard workout, lifting weights, and everything comes into part of that. So once again, it's just sticking to those basics of making sure you are using your body. We are made to move, and there's obviously different factors that come into play when we are moving, in terms of having to process certain things and whatever else that also is stimulating the brain in that regard.
Just a question there that's just popping up. But now, so you've been playing a lot of racket sports for a bit now, and we discussed that racket sports come up high up in kind of like a brain activity stimulator. I'm not going to say like, have you felt that you are smarter now, but so when I was so I did engineering, and then I programmed for the gym for a good couple of years, and that was my kind of outlet of like thinking. Like, I need to plan this, time that, do this, test that, see this doesn't work, that doesn't work. So that was keeping me busy. But I'm finding now that I'm trying to do other things to keep myself busy. A simple thing like playing Scrabble and doing Sudoku on a daily basis now, and reading. I started reading the God Sard book, the Parasitic Mind, I think it is. But I read Rassi book, then I started reading this book. I'm like, okay, I need to think now, because that was using like bigger words. Not that the Rassi book doesn't use big words, but it's a simple story and it's a lifestyle thing. But, so I was starting to read his book. But do you feel now that you've been playing some paddle for a while now, do you feel like it's maybe keeping you more kind of like, I need to be awake for this game, like I can't be tired, I need to be a bit sharper, or that you are feeling sharper, like you like kind of reacting to a shot better, or...
No, well, I mean, like personally for myself, like a game like paddle, it's not really the fitness that ever gets to me. It's more, am I staying focused and remembering everything to keep that going? So the focus point for the hour and a half of a paddle match is the harder part versus the physicality of it. Because a little bit of concentration or not reacting to something because you lack that focus can, you know, have a huge effect on winning a point or not. So that is the harder part of that. Whereas, you know, whether it's playing a paddle match or even in a CrossFit workout, like if you are not focused on what you're doing and where you're resting and saying, you know, staying in that moment or being accountable to something and knowing what your next move is, like you're not going to be performing at your best. So, you know, that's what I'm saying. Activity on many different levels are going to have that. So, you know, even if I'm simply just doing a back squat, you know, am I concentrating? You know, am I just going through the motion? Like there's still brain stimulation happening. Like, yes, the more you do something, the less you have to do that. But, you know, am I engaging through the floor? Am I keeping my core contracted? You know, there should be that sort of mental stimulation happening. You know, am I, you know, and that can translate to that. It can translate to many different other things. And that's your activity of choice. So even if I'm on a mountain bike and you're going down a hill and you're like, cool, am I going to take this path? Am I going to take that path? You know, or a trail run, there's that type of thing happening. So the brain is always stimulated when we're in some sort of activity. Certain activities require more stimulation and more thought than others. And that's why it's good to mix up the type of activity that you are doing and, you know, getting the best of all parts.
With that, is it better to play than paddle in the morning or the evening? Like if you had to choose a time in for your brain stimulation and then link to that, like we've obviously got all these tasks that we talk of. So it's better to, like you say, do tasks in the morning. So get up, do your admin early in the morning, and then try roll out the rest of your day doing less brain intense things to give your brain a bit of a rest while it's busy processing, and then eventually trying to rest and recover and then wake up and try attack your day. Mm-hmm. So is there a bit of a, can there be like a one size fits all kind of like option here where, okay, you wake up at a time, doesn't matter when you're waking up, but then you try and do certain things to try optimize the longevity of your brain? Because obviously there's going to be like too much pressure on your brain eventually.
Sure. I mean, I think the brain is pretty capable. I think to put too much pressure on your brain will take a lot. But there's a difference in learning a skill. Are there optimal times later in the day or earlier in the day to learn a skill, to become better at it, versus I'm learning a skill for the longevity of my brain. So I think if you're looking purely at longevity, then it doesn't matter. Most of the studies we see show improved brain health over prolonged periods of time merely because you were learning a new skill. So it's about exposing yourself to things that you are needing to learn to be able to do. And that can, obviously, physical exercises is a massive part of that, because we know that brain health and cardiovascular health and muscle health are all connected. But it can be something as simple as, like you say, doing a Sudoku, learning how to play chess, learning, I mean, this is not great, but like even like PlayStation games, we see the elderly become much more engaged in life because they play a couple of PlayStation games, just because they're kind of relearning how to engage with something and learn something that they've never been able to do before. So as far as brain health goes, it doesn't matter. As long as you're challenging your brain to something, like Neil says, that requires focus for a prolonged period of time, you'll get the benefits. When it comes to learning a new skill, this is quite interesting, because the brain essentially, like you said, functions according to circadian rhythms. So when we sleep to be able to remember, because we're consolidating knowledge. When
You're
we sleep.
filing everything. You're packing
file
everything away.
everything,
You're trying to
correct.
create memories and
And you also sleep to forget. So you'll see someone who goes through a traumatic experience, they'll sleep. There'll be some kind of blunting of emotions when they wake up. So the brain also uses sleep to dissociate trauma or negative emotion from certain things. So that kind of thing of like, time heals all things, blah, blah, blah. It's not necessarily true, but we know the more you sleep, the more negative connotations to experiences you're able to forget.
that's quite interesting, because in that God's Art book that I'm reading, he's Jewish, so they go through one of the wars, or he's Lebanese, which is the Jew, and then he says he forgets this one part of his life, but it's obviously just because his brain's just kind of shut it out over time.
Shut out of time. Yeah.
So he's like, I could remember it, but now, I mean, he's quite old. He was born in 1967. So, I mean, he's quite old now. So he's obviously just forgotten that whole thing through over time. So sleep over time will just push that traumatic experience out.
Yes. So what we see with trying to learn new habits is, if you're going to try and learn a new skill, you want to be pushing that skill sort of towards later in the day, that you're trying to do something which is then consolidated and then reminded of earlier in the next day. So you do it a combination of both, but the most skill learned will be afternoon, evening, for like all intents and purposes. It's not to say if you study in the morning, you're going to forget everything. Not at all.
Okay, so we've got our 5 pillars, and we're doing that all perfect. We're sleeping well, and we've got all those things going. So there's a couple of extras that we can do here. So let's try not forget all the extras. So one's obviously supplements, but I want to tap into the hot and cold therapy. So I mean, I've been doing that quite a bit now. You do neither of that, but just because you don't enjoy it, or
No, I've done it at different points in time. It's just, I mean, this morning I had a cancellation, so I sat in the sauna a little bit. But you're never going to be able to do everything unless that's what you're doing with your day. Like, there's only so many hours in a day. Pick and choose what you can do. So, if that's not something that's accessible or fits into your day easy, then you don't have to force it. But also, if you find the things that you do enjoy doing that are benefited you, that's what's going to keep you coming back. And that's, at the end of the day, the most important thing, is having that consistency. So, for myself, I just don't prioritize that. Maybe at a later point in my life, or doing whatever else, I might.
maybe as you, like, I wouldn't say you're busy, but maybe as you find more time now, like you said, you had a cancellation, so you jumped in.
Yeah.
So maybe as you get a little bit more time, you'll slot it in. I think that's where I'm doing it a bit more frequent, because I'm not getting that workout in, or I need that challenge. So I'm like, okay, cool. I've got 3 to 10 minutes. I'm getting in the ice bath now. Then I can say that I've done something hard for the day. Like it's more like a bit of a mental game for me. So shit, I didn't get my workout in. Fine, just jump in the ice bath. At least I can say that I've done something good. Then there's that, and there's supplements. If you're talking about the hot and cold, is that something that so we've got two different kind of like people here. So he's got a busy schedule. He's not getting in because he's doing other things that are obviously beneficial. But then someone like me, would you highly recommend someone does hot and cold therapy then
Absolutely.
on a daily basis
Absolutely.
from a younger age? You know, like should I be
Sure.
throwing James in the shower with me in a cold shower?
No.
You know?
So I would say from about 16 years old, again, they need to be able to understand that I'm doing this for a reason. So, I mean, if your kid wants to join you, by all means, but I wouldn't force anything on them because, again, like negative associations are unfortunately very difficult to break through when you're older. So he might form an aversion to cold. And then when he's older, he never ice baths. And it's actually really not that bad. But he perceives it as really bad from childhood, if we can call it trauma. But it wouldn't really be trauma. You get what I'm saying? Like forcing them to do something.
So we were at Clan William. I mean, Tiavat now this weekend camping. Won't go into detail. But we had to go to the Ablutions to go shower because we never shower where we were. But it's the little gas guy. So now I forgot towels. I forgot soap. So I took the sunlight from the camping thing. So I've got sunlight. Haven't got towels. I've got like a hand towel that I took from the boat. Both kids, Ems and James, standing there. And so I'm like, okay, gas thing's on. So I turn it on and it's like one of those hot cold, but it's like burn yourself hot, ice cold. Burn yourself hot.
Perfect
so I'm like,
hot cold therapy.
Perfect.
so while I'm there, I'm like, well, this is a good like tester to see like, okay, where's the so as James is in, I'm like, okay. I'm like, get out. And then I'm like, okay, cool. Oh, it's cooling down. Put him back in. And then he's like, cold. And I'm like, jump him out. So I've got both these kids like hot, cold, like scorching thing. So it was like a cool thing. So like maybe let them try it out. Like maybe play a game. Like I like to do the hot, cold shower. So I'll be in the shower doing a cold shower. And then I'm like, make it hot, make it cold. So like maybe play a game from a young age. But like you said, like don't torment them.
I think you have to understand brains and muscles are different. So it's not like let's say you get super muscular and then you've kind of got muscle that carries you into your old age and you don't develop as severe sarcopenia as someone who maybe didn't have muscular development in the young age. The brain is not really like that. The brain will develop to a point and that'll be that. So for children, we're looking at brain development. For adults, we're looking at holding on to what we've got for as long as we can. And I don't necessarily think that cold, hot exposure will help their brains develop more than the kid not doing it.
So the hot cold therapy is more for adults. We're trying to really look after our brains.
Keep what we've got.
Try to keep what we got. What does the hot and cold do that's best? There's like melatonin, but what for the brain is it doing best? Like
so it's obviously upregulating all of your positive neurochemicals within the brain. So things like serotonin and dopamine are released. Your sort of classic endorphins of exercise, which are beneficial for brain function, but also for mood and your general well-being, if I can call it that. What's very interesting is we see a lot of, obviously, after death brain slices of people who have very small and atrophied brains. So brains have what are called sulcuses and gyruses, which are basically mountains and valleys. It looks like this big mush. And as we get older, the mountains get smaller and the valleys get deeper. When you cut a brain in half, you can see this. You can see where a mountain was is kind of pulled apart, and now there's a bit more of a gap. With people who intentionally do these sort of hot and cold exposures, or should I say with people who have a good mental regulation throughout their life, those valleys are much less and the mountains are much better maintained. So mental health isn't just a speculative, esoteric idea. It is a physical thing. We're looking at mental health, the health of the brain organ itself when we're speaking about this. And if you're able to keep your mental health up, so your mood, positivity, outlook on life, I'm not saying you should be falsely happy, but if you are genuinely in a mentally good place, your brain matter stays more in the structure that it should be for a longer period of time.
Yeah, so the brain health is actually there.
It's like if we talk about heart health.
Yeah.
When we think of brain health,
or lung
we think
health. Like you look at a smoker,
exactly.
and then you see how bad their lungs are, and you look at someone that's
because brain health is poorly understood, or not poorly understood. It's not as well understood as other organs. We start to think of mental health as this thing that exists. It's a physical thing. It's about our brain. It happens.
Yeah. So you think of mental health like my brain. When I think, it's like this thing that I need to think of all the time. No, it's the actual physical, tangible thing that you're trying to fix or keep healthy.
For sure.
Okay, so we got the hot and cold therapy. So we're going to try and do that when we, let's let's say as you get older, you can't exercise as much as like Neil's still training hard, but in 20 years' time, and he's going to be 60, he's obviously going to be able to train, but then he's going to start looking at doing hot and cold therapy a little bit more because we want to look after the brain.
Sure.
What else? So we know exercise looks after the brain, hot and cold. What else can we start then doing? I'd say not from because we were talking about it to Nikki the other day, and she said that her mom's maybe catching on to the summer stuff a little bit late. Where should we start looking at other things like omega fish oils and then general, not nutrition, so like I'm eating a relatively good diet, but what else can we really spend some money on and be like, cool, I'm going to take 1,000 Rand and this is what I'm going to chuck it into to make sure for the next 40 years I'm going to be looking after myself. You know?
For sure. First thing I'll say is it's never too late to make a dramatic difference. I have a client now, he's 79 years old, and he's very badly affected by dementia. Some days knows who I am, some days it doesn't. It's not worth saying, oh, well, this happens as you get old, just let him go peacefully. No, there's a lot that you can do and a lot you can still do. And we are seeing improvements with him. So I'd be very careful to say, I'm hopping onto this a bit late. Not at all. The body responds very quickly. Actually, it's very forgiving. It shouldn't be that forgiving, but it is. Our body's very forgiving. Should we want to be starting to supplement? I think there's many things that are helpful. The one that I think has been most overlooked is creatine. Creatine in brain health is maybe something that's been maybe not so well understood and thus overlooked. But I think everyone should be taking at least 5 grams of creatine a day. Bigger people probably closer to 10. Active people closer to 10. Very, very briefly, we've got lots of studies to show that it improves brain health, not just in how the brain structure and how it works, but improved intelligence, increased recovery from concussions, less likelihood to get concussed. So if you take a group of people, they did this with 20 grams of creatine, which is a fairly high amount. That might give you some GRT issues, but they gave them 20 grams of creatine and then followed them throughout the season versus a group who didn't get it. And the creatine group had way less concussions throughout. And that's just like actual head trauma hitting your head. And it's not to say they had less head trauma, but it bolstered their brains to be able to handle that head trauma.
Just quickly, so we obviously chatted about that kind of thing. I mean, you visited your gran not so long ago, and we talk about it's your gran, eh? And then we spoke about Vicky's gran as well. Did you notice like that come in quite quickly, her dementia, or was it like over quite a few years?
No, it's over a period of time. It's not like today she's here, tomorrow she's gone sort of thing. Obviously, that comes into play. But, I mean, the sad part of it all is how much is really, spoken to her in that moment of saying, hey, let's try help you delay this. I don't think much is actually done in that instance where someone who's in a hospital, in, an old age home, and now she's obviously in frail care, that type of thing, which can't really take care of herself. But how much is said to delay? Like you can go into these places and they're still serving you cookies at lunch or tea time and whatever else, pumping up the sugar and doing what else. Are they playing games or doing anything or encourage people to go move and do it? Or these people are just sitting in front of the room staring at a TV, So, there's a number of things like Ben said, it's never too late to do something to try hold on. Obviously, the younger you start, the better. Prevention is better care, and the sooner you start, like compound interests, you're going to receive maximum benefits. But, nothing happens overnight, especially with that. And you can obviously have early onset of certain symptoms and you can start picking up. But the sooner you do something about it, it's always going to help.
Yeah, so I think that's kind of where we were chatting the other day because we've both got grandparents that are now, Vicky's gran's 97. How old's your gran?
Also towards 90, I think.
Yeah.
Like that.
So, I mean, these are old ages, but I mean, I want to start with my parents now. So, like, will creatine help with something like alcoholism damage to the brain? Or is there not enough study with that?
There's no studies that I'm aware of, but the idea is that the alcohol you consume damages the cells of your brain and creatine will delay damage. So, theoretically, I'd say yes, it absolutely would. I wouldn't encourage consuming both because both are metabolized by the liver and kidneys. So now you're putting more strain on both. So you walk a fine line. It becomes very person specific. You'd have to do bloods and see where they are metabolically. Where's their health? Are their kidneys and liver functioning well? If so, I would add the creatine. Yeah.
Okay, so if I've got someone that has cut dramatically down on the drinking, they potentially are still doing 1 to 3 units a day. could you slowly start trying to introduce them to a creatine level to try and help?
I would say the alcohol intake is still too high. Maybe 1 to 3 units a week.
Okay.
But again, you could do bloods and take the guesswork out of this. Another thing I would recommend is omegas. Very, very important for brain health.
So the one thing that I learned there with omegas, and I think I posted some of the stuff on our group the other day, is that they talk about that you can't take too much. So like you're going to take too much, you're going to have the shits probably, or your gut's going to go a little bit funny. But again, like the more the better, obviously depending on your budget and depending like how you're eating. What would you say is a good balance between? I'm taking like 1.5 grams a day just because it's...
Yeah, I think 1.5 grams a day is pretty much. So look, you're looking at two things when you're looking at how much can we take. We're looking at how much can you take that there's no side effects, and how much am I taking that there's actually benefit from. If I take 2 grams, is it double the benefit if I take 4 grams? No, it's not. It's very glacial or very small increments that you get from increasing the dose. So I think 1.5 to 2 grams is significantly fine. If I've got a guy with concussion, I start them on 2 grams. If they're a big boy, like we do have some really big boys, then we go to 4 grams for a while. But I think that 1.5 to 2 grams is kind of the sweet spot for like a long period of time.
Okay. What other benefits is that oil having in your brain, like just physically? Like what is it physically doing?
So
just so we can tell our listeners.
So it'll also help with memory. So again, the brain is a construct. It's a mass of these neurons, and the omega-3 support the neurons. So what we see is improved cognitive function. So you're able to remember, you think more clearly, you're able to process information more clearly and hold on to that information for a longer time. And also anxiety goes down. So essentially the overexcitation in the brain that we see with generalized anxiety is diminished with omega-3s because the structures are adequately supported. So
the brain can talk to itself better and be like, this is okay.
Electrical currents are flowing in the way they need to be flowing because they now have enough omegas to do so. So yeah, I mean,
So I think like what you pointed out earlier was just the brain health is what we're looking for. So we're trying to look after this piece of meat, and the better we look after, so that then links straight to hydration then. So one of our key points, our pillars, is enough hydration in the day.
Yeah.
So you've got creatine that anybody should be taking. Creatine monohydrate, just kind of
pure creatine monohydrate, unflavored, provided you have no kidney and liver issues.
Yeah,
you should be on that.
And then, so we're adding omegas. What else now? So we chat about hydration, making sure the hydration, but there's a couple of pointers there we need to make sure there's magnesium, potassium, and then obviously just sodium, and trying to get a little bit of all of that in.
You don't have to drink that every time you drink a fluid. So water is still of massive benefit. The first feeling you'll get when you're dehydrated is a headache, which is your brain. It's a physical thing again, saying like, I'm not being supported the way I need. So if there's not enough fluid in the brain, you'll start to get symptoms. But yeah, you can't only hydrate with water because unfortunately water is devoid, or the water that we get from our taps is devoid of the micronutrients that we need to survive. So we have to add it back in. So adding electrolytes back in is always going to be a good idea. And then obviously there's like literally anything that causes inflammation is something you should avoid, and anything that is anti-inflammatory will be of, that's not necessarily true, but natural anti-inflammatories are brain supportive. Things like curcumin, which is found in turmeric, things like glutathione, which we've discussed in the episode on immunity with NAC. So you can supplement that. Glutathione is actually a very interesting intravenous medicine coming into the biohacking world, where you can have a glutathione drip, which shows massive promise for both brain health and general recovery for athletic purposes.
Is that also linked, sorry about the alcohol side, but that's quite a good one, I think.
For alcohol, it's an antioxidant.
Yeah.
So any oxidants built up in the processing of alcohol will be not destroyed, but at least brought down by glutathione. Resveratrol is very similar.
So if you have a little bit of a binge, can you just for a couple of days just kind of take a little bit of glutathione and try to offset that damage that you've done?
Can't do any harm. Can't do more harm, should I say.
So we spoke on the way here, so we chatted just briefly. So when you exercise, you want to, or your body produces lactate, and your brain actually feeds on that. Can you tap into that a little bit? Obviously now we're trying to not go back to how exercise helps, but what other fuel does your body like?
So the brain primarily functions on ketones and glucose. Those are the two things it likes a lot. But your body can convert lactate into pyruvate and from pyruvate into ketones. So it doesn't use lactate per se, but through some processes, you can use it for energy. That's not really why exercise is important for brain health.
Okay. And then was that one? What else am I missing on that?
Yeah, but obviously,
Because there's a link to that.
ketones have been linked to obviously decent brain health for people who might be struggling with certain issues. And that's obviously either through diets, avoiding sort of carbohydrates, high protein, high sort of fats, that type of thing. And again, it's just you can go that whole route, or you need to be careful of what your sugar intake is.
Yeah.
Because too much sugar is going to be bad for your brain, as it's also inflammatory, like sort of Ben said. So that is a big one. I think dementia and Alzheimer's literally been labeled as type 3 diabetes at this point. My question would be on that is, do we look at it like, cool, is it what I've done today or something like that? Is it done what I've done in the last 30, 40 years of my life? Like how much effect has my sugar intake as a kid had effect on my chances of getting, say, Alzheimer's as I get older? I suppose that would be an interesting way to look at it and go like, cool, did I do too much damage back then already?
Well, I mean, your brain's trying to, like we spoke about, the kids, their brains are trying to grow until they, 16 to 23. So if you are consuming that much sugar at a younger age, you're overstimulating your brain. Your brain hasn't got a chance to just grow.
It will still develop normally, but the pathways that it forms will be too excitatory. So the actual brain itself will look normal if you're looking at it, but the way that the information is transmitted between the neurons will be different. Makes sense?
Like overstimulated, basically.
Yeah.
So again, it's the TV, it's the sugars, it's too much.
Correct.
But I mean, so I just don't want to forget, but we spoke about, I mean, you're in good shape, I'm in pretty good shape, you're in good shape besides your foot, but like we still can't go and, because we can process sugars quite well, we can't go and then say, okay, well, I'm in shape, I can still, have X, Y, Z. We've got to think of the longer, now you're saying like over 10, 20, 30, 40 years, we still need to be careful. Both, like you and I, we need to still manage these things. We can't go, well, we're this kind of active and we're looking after ourselves in all these other areas, ice bathing, hot sauna, all these other things, but we still, to a degree, you're doing a percentage damage to our brains,
Absolutely.
And
it's not even long term. It's like today. Like you consume sugar, you'll be depressed, I guarantee.
Yeah.
It's like you have short play of your attention span goes down. I saw a very interesting study that showed children can come off epileptic drugs on ketone-based diets. So now I'm not saying that this is very much not a medical prescription to take your kids off their epileptic medication, but kids have literally been taken off their epileptic medication just by removing sugar from their diet.
Yeah, so
now
the
that's
question,
like a lifelong disease
Yeah.
disappeared.
I
Because
think
they stopped
similar
eating sugar.
things for autism and stuff potentially as well, I think.
It's, massively so.
Yeah, I think Rhonda Patrick talks about it quite a bit in that one episode. She's talking and they like really go into depth of how ketosis has just helped case study after case study. So it's just a discussion that we need to have on the side. But so I've got a client that they are injecting like 4 times a day with insulin, and it's a set amount at a certain time of the day, but they're not eating well at all. Like their diet is super poor, but they still are making sure that before they eat, they're then shooting. And then I said to him, well, just let's try and cut out carbs completely, and then try and find a base of just like a good line. But she's also having epileptic fits now. So like it's obviously a link through with her diabetes. So I mean, a keto diet for her, and I mean, she's been having like eggs, avo on like 1 piece of brown bread, and she's been kind of doing anything for literally a week and a half. But I mean, this is the kind of person that I think could completely benefit and help her brain, because now it's not just her body, like you're saying now, like type 3 diabetes, like it's her body that was first impacted.
Yes.
She's got no like idea of the brain health issue now that she's having. She's had to forcefully stop drinking because the medication she's taking for the epilepsy, like you can't drink with the medication. But she's got to drastically make these steps forward. Otherwise, her brain health in the next 10, 20, 30 years is going to completely be gone,
For sure.
So I mean, it's a pure case study, and that's like a case study that I want to bring to the table and see, okay, cool, can we document it from last week and see how see how we can fix this person, and then show people, look, through this, and this, we've got this person potentially off of medication, to a degree. So that's a nice case study.
I mean, sugar is one of the hardest drugs to sort of kick because it's around you every day and in everything. So it's like, it's so easy to tap into sugar because it's just there. And we tend to, as a society, celebrate things with food. And that's generally bad food. So every time you're technically poisoning yourself. The other big thing is like, no one's going to do that for you. You have to take responsibility for yourself to manage that, because no one's going to pull that donut out of your mouth. And yeah, it is addictive. You've seen people who are threatened, like, you're going to lose your leg unless you don't stop eating the sugar, and they can't quit it. But on the flip side of like, that is your responsibility, not only to yourself, but I mean, whether we're looking at dementia or cancer, we know sugar is like powers both of those things. You have to take that responsibility, not just for yourself, but for those people around you. Dementia, cancer is hard on that person, but the people around you are also facing that. So if I have a partner in my life, like, it's important for me to take care of that so that I don't become dependent on them, or they have to look after me, or, your kids taking care of you because you haven't done the work today. So it's not just about okay, I want to feel better now. It's like, think about those people. And if you can't do it for yourself, then look at the people around you and do it for them. Because sometimes people don't do it for themselves, but then find that respect for yourself or that motivation in the others around you to push yourself on that.
Yeah, like you nailed on the head there. I mean, there's a good couple of people around me that I feel like just look after yourself better, because you're putting pressure on me, and it's not actually fair on me. Like, I actually care about you. So sort out one or two things, because I care about your health and your overall mental health, because it's affecting me and my family, and I don't want to like exclude you out of my life, but like, it would be better if you maybe weren't here, because like, you're putting pressure on my lifestyle, and it's a super hard thing to say to somebody like Vicky's grand, like, just to go into a little bit of detail. I mean, she's in the old age home, and she's got full blown dementia. Like, she doesn't know who anybody is. But she's now a huge cost, like, to people around her. She's running out of like funding, and now that's going to be on Vicky. Like, it's a hard thing to take on.
It is.
And I'm not saying that she could have done better, because she's done a super good innings. And I think like 7 years ago, when I first thought like, she's this old duck's not going to make it much longer, and she's like pushed on 7 years. But I mean, I think what we're talking about now, if we can put pressure on people around us to start changing their ways now from a younger age, I think it will only benefit me. So if I try to put pressure on these people that I find are struggling, like, hey man, have you tried creatine? Hey man, make sure you're taking your omegas. Hey man, do these things. It's probably going to benefit me in the long run as well. So it's not my health, it's their health, but it's actually going to benefit me. So try and be a good like Samaritan here.
Yeah, the cost to society is immense.
Yeah, that's the thing. I mean, and it's just trying to not force them, but hey man, have you thought about doing this?
And the one thing people I think forget is that, unfortunately, you're going to live longer than you want to. Modern medicine is going to keep you alive.
Yeah,
we're probably heading into the handies from this generation onwards.
Yeah,
you've got to have some kind of quality of life left over. Otherwise, you are going to be that person who hates their life. And
I think the balance, because Peter that I always bump into at the gym, like, he's one of my older clients, but we always bump into him. He's like, hey, have you read this? And he listened to Peter Attia now, or he read the book. Very good book.
Good book. It's called Outlive, guys. Read that book. It's a phenomenal
It's called Outlive,
book.
and it's got 4 basic topics of what you need to do
really
to
good.
just make sure that you live longer. But we just said, like, you don't want your brain to go longer than your body, or you don't want your body to go longer than your brain. You want to try and keep the two together, because you're going to either be then sitting there, my brain's like, I need to do this, I need to do that, or you're going to be there and your body is still functional, So it's like, how do I balance these two as far as I can? And then hopefully my body just goes, and then, it is what it is.
Yep.
All right, man. Did we miss anything that you want to cover?
I think the gut biome thing that you were talking about
Oh, yes,
earlier
we did, yeah.
I would
So touch
like
us
to
on the
bring
gut.
that. So Neil was just saying, like, with the gut, now we're kind of understanding that this is more involved in our emotions and our mental well-being than before. The gut being the second brain of the body. Maybe go a bit more into what you meant there.
Pardon me. Yeah. So your gut obviously plays a major function in terms of anything you're processing goes through your body, and there's a link between sort of your gut and your brain. So let me use this as an example. Like about 2 years ago, I had, a bad sort of stomach sort of incident, and sort of for 4 weeks, everything was topsy-turvy. And at the end of that, I felt depressed for like the first time in my life, going like, I don't understand why I have no energy and list to do anything, etc., etc. And that's basically because my stomach had been to a point where my serotonin levels and everything else had now been trashed. And that's what led me to sort of feeling that way. And it took a little bit of time to bring things back to normal sort of standards. But if you are not paying attention to that and your gut microbiome is a mess, you can lead to things like feeling depressed, etc., or bad digestion, which means malnourishment because you're not getting certain things. You get stuff like SIBO, which is a festation of sort of bad bacteria in the gut, would lead to bloating and that type of thing. And again, all of these things have shown to link towards some sort of mental sort of unwellness, because there's a link between these two things. And if this one is not functioning well, then this one is not getting what it needs. So, taking care of what you are doing down there and monitoring that type of thing can have a great effect to how you're feeling. And you might experience this through like, hey, I ate this food, I didn't feel well yet, I'm not feeling well up here, from simple sort of things that we can do on sort of a daily. And that's going to be different from person to person. It's like people talk about like, oh, well, I don't tolerate gluten well, and I suffer now from brain fog. It's that simple in terms of that type of thing, in terms of the food we're eating and how that plays a part in us. I'm not the medical expert on this, so I'm not going to go into sort of full details, but, it becomes important to recognize those type of things. And if you are experiencing those things of like, hey, I haven't been feeling too great, but lately I've been feeling bloated all the time, or this type of thing, maybe there's something going on there that needs to be investigated.
Yeah, I mean, like just talking about simple, just getting your health back from a bad tummy. I wouldn't say I get a stomach bug often, but I somehow do just every now and then. I kind of have an issue. But all I do is I fast. So literally I got back when I landed in Mauritius, had like a bit of a bad stomach. I think it was the food on the plane, to be honest. And then took 2 or 3 days to kind of balance out. Towards the end of my trip, perfect. When I flew back, Kaylee was joking with me like, oh, there was this incident on Air Mauritius, whatever it was, 72 people out of both ends, like stuck on the plane. And there was like this massive headline news thing. So I was like, oh, great. On the plane sitting there, I'm like, so hungry now. I'm just going to order it. So I'm like, yeah, okay, cool, chicken. Then Brendan's like, dude, you must always ask for extra because you never get. And I had another one. Like 3 days later, there's my stomach. Like, got back like Wednesday, Thursday. I was like feeling terrible. But what I do is I normally fast. So if you are eating something poor, just fix your next meal. In my case, what I normally do is I fast just so my stomach can just get rid of the bug. I try not to take anything to plug it up or any direct like anti-diarrhea thing, like what's it, Valoid or Imodium, or the I call it cement. You take that, it's like a sachet, man. It's Smecta. That stuff. It just blocks you up and you're blocking the bug from actually passing through. So what you want to try to do is just I fast and then just try to get some kind of pre or probiotic in as quick as you can. But with the brain health from that, what's a more medical kind of thing to do if you are like stomach bug sick to try and get your balance back as quick as possible? Is it just that kind of thing, fast and just try and eat a fermented food or switch it up a bit?
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah.
So there's, I think we've spoken about this on podcasts before, but the immunoprotective, what we considered there were two organs that are immunoprivileged, which was the uterus and the brain, which for all intents and purposes, our general normal bacteria can't penetrate. And that's now been disproven actually within Alzheimer's studies where they found bacterial gut bacteria in the brain of this Alzheimer's person. And they were able to trace it down the neurons all the way back into the gut so they can find the route that this thing is now taking. So we know that gut bacteria is getting to the brain, and we know that that's maybe not the only cause of Alzheimer's, but definitely a cause of Alzheimer's. So correcting gut biome is a priority, is what I'm trying to say. So should you have some kind of gut dysbiosis or whatever it is, obviously this is over many years. You want to have your diet correct, but trying to get it back as quickly as possible, fasting is definitely the best thing you can do. Increasing the amount of fermented foods you eat over a small period of time. You can't just eat a whole lot. It'll be like a tablespoon of kimchi today, and then you up it by small amounts. Kombucha is something I would maybe not highly recommend for everyone. It is a fermented food. It is technically good for you. It does have a higher sugar content, which some of the, I don't want to say bad bacteria, but some of the overgrown bacteria might flourish on. So kombucha is actually less and less showing to be as promising as we had at once thought it was. Other than that, I would recommend trying to avoid antibiotics. A lot of times people will be given antibiotics for any tummy. It's not the worst thing because you will kill the bug, but you're going to kill a whole lot of other things at the same time. So
again, and it's going to make you feel bad for a bit. So just try ride it out, and
if it's not necessary, avoid the antibiotics.
Yeah.
And then, the Imodiums and the Smecta and the Pectrolite, all those kind of things, there's nothing wrong with that. So people like, do you do it? Do you not do it? If you have to function in your day, there's nothing wrong with taking it. But it's always best to not. There's no free lunch anywhere in the world. So whatever medicine you take will have a side effect. There's going to be a cost to your health at some point. So if you need to take it because you're going into a business meeting, please take it. Like, it's fine, but avoid it as far as you can.
All right, talking about toilet breaks. I'm itching here for a pee.
Fine, wrap it up there.
Done.
Cool.
Lekker, guys.
Thanks, guys.